Hey everybody, welcome. Really appreciate everybody being here. Um, so really excited for the topic today, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the folks at RevGenius for helping us put this on. Love working with everybody here. Love the community. Been part of the community for quite a few years now, and have enjoyed. Have enjoyed it quite a bit. Can everybody see my camera, or am I not visible? Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that we're all good. Okay, yeah. So it's really been great to watch this community grow over the last few years, and I'm really happy to be joined by our special guest Danielle, who's the VP of RevOps at Zappy. I had the opportunity to chat with Danielle on a recent podcast. Let me just turn off and turn back on my camera. And all right. Can everybody see me or not? Danielle, maybe we should, Gina, maybe we should get rid of the slides. It's possible that nobody can see me that way. All right. We good now? Everybody can see me? I can see Danielle, so I'm hoping that means all of you can see me. Okay. Can I just get a thumbs up if everybody can see my lovely face? All right. Lots of thumbs up. Okay. Hopefully that means that you think I have a lovely face as well. So I'll just go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Mark Lerner. I'm the Director of Growth Marketing at DealHub. We are a configure price quote solution, CPQ, natively integrated with CRMs like HubSpot, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, and others, really bringing the power of CPQ, enterprise CPQ, with the agility and flexibility that's needed kind of in the modern day sales organization, and kind of speaking to that user friendliness that we're going to discuss today. Before we move on, Danielle, maybe you can go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
For sure. Danielle Marquis. I'm with a company called Zappy, Z-A-P-P-I, not Zapier. We are a market research software platform, and our mission is to really help businesses get better decisions around their advertising and innovations, and trying to digitize a previously more white glove agency-based space and bring speed, cost effectiveness, but also better answers and connected learnings to our customers out there. So it's been I've been with Zappy for 5 years this month. And I've seen a lot of growth around Zappy. It's funny. I've been in the ops space for 16 years now, which is my first year saying that, which sounds very long. Just dated myself a bit. But I've seen the evolution of the ops space from sales ops, marketing ops, I've done channel ops, and now this world of RevOps. And just Mark and I have chatted a lot recently about the RevOps space. I was just literally telling him yesterday my thoughts on, how evolved certain companies have gotten with their thinking of RevOps and how some are just rebranding as sales ops. So that's an exciting thing to think about and talk about there. But my passions are actually more around this topic of how does technology fit into the world of RevOps, and how are we using it to optimize business process, data integrity, and help the companies we're working with operate in a more systematic and efficient way.
Yeah. I think, so I don't know if everybody's still not seeing me. I apologize if you're not, but we're just going to roll with it because we're live, right? So if you're not seeing me, you're seeing a lovely picture of my face, which I guess is good enough. Okay, so Doug says he sees me now. I don't know what's going on, but we'll roll with it. So the topic today is the importance of user-friendly tools in RevOps. And I think there's this kind of misunderstanding, or people have this idea that in order for something to be powerful, a tool, process, technology, it can't be simple. It can't be user-friendly. It has to be complicated. It's kind of inherent. And that, if you see something that looks user-friendly, then it must not be made for kind of the powerful enterprise needs that you have. And I think that this is just a fundamental kind of misunderstanding. And, you know, I noticed that, you know, Danielle is actually going to be speaking at an upcoming event here in New York called RevOps Alliance. And, you know, it got me thinking she'd be a perfect guest for this chat. So I kind of wanted to kick things off, Danielle, by talk a little bit about kind of the challenges and the pain points from a revenue operations perspective in dealing with, you know, some of these things where tools are just overly complicated and maybe don't get adopted by internal teams. And, you know, some of the inefficiencies that, you know, that might create, you know, maybe we even reflect a little bit on some of the experiences that you've had. So, I mean, you know, from your perspective, do you agree that there's kind of this this assumption that people might have that if it's powerful, it must be complicated, and if it's not complicated, it can't be powerful? And yeah, I mean, maybe we can just kick it off there.
Definitely. And a lot of, if anyone's seen any of the chats I've been lucky enough to be a part of over the last probably 2 years, I'd say a big theme is getting back to basics. So whether it's when you're looking at your analytics, I think we've overcomplicated a lot. It's funny, as RevOps has evolved, we have really live, my bad. I was going to say badass, smart people that came out combined. I guess we are kind of that too. Yeah, having really smart folks really, you know, take a space, and the more you focus on an area, it's easy to overcomplicate that, right? And come up with all these new cool models. And, you know, we've exhausted these basic metrics. So we're then going to build in these more complicated models with our BI team and across our company scorecard. And then you kind of forget about some of those basic, more easier to control metrics for your revenue teams. So same with technology. And obviously the tech stack space has only continued to evolve, and it's really difficult to navigate if you have not been living in it. It can be really difficult, to your point, to understand, like, hey, this looks easy. How difficult. My balance I always look at when I'm evaluating tech, I'll say, is like something even might look easy. And it's not necessarily that I'll be like, oh, it looks easy, it must not be evolved enough for us, but more so, looks really easy on this demo. I wonder how hard it is to manage it on the back end from my team's perspective to make it that easy for a user, right? There's some of those aspects too. So I think the actual first starting point isn't even the tech, but it's really taking the time to map out the maturity status. And I've been really testing out this, like, we have our customer journey pretty aligned across the company. We spent the last year putting really strong entry exit criteria metrics in place to track that, so we can start seeing where things are stuck. But then you need to think about, okay, there's obviously key players across your go-to-market teams across that customer journey. And what's the maturity status of those team players? What's the maturity status of your business processes, right? A great example right now is we're implementing 6th Sense. And I was not super confident that we had the right partners on marketing or the right data layer to immediately also implement 6th Sense predictive. I am so excited for adding in any type of generative or predictive analytics to the tools we have, because it saves people time. And ideally, the tools will start to help prioritize where otherwise people would have to be in there, sourcing out, okay, this type of activity led to this, so we want to start to elevate that and set up alerts over there, and right. There's a benefit to moving to the more complicated side of 6th Sense for us, but the reality is it's an expensive and intensive implementation, which I don't have the right marketing partner. So when I think about the maturity of my marketing work that has to actually ingest that data, we're not there yet. And I know that I have a marketing ops person that is really bandwidth constraint on just some of those back to basics pipelining of our lead gen, right? So there's things us as RevOps, and we should be super nerdy and excited about the possibility of the tech stack we have. But we also have to remember the maturity level of the people we need to use that tech stack, because unfortunately, we're not the ones using it every day. We are the ones that have to maintain it every day and answer the FAQs, though. So that's something, you're looking out for your own team if you do slow some of that down. But the other side of it is the more complicated stuff. I've come down to when I first evaluated sales engagement tools, and I was looking at what I think everyone does when they first start looking at that space, and they compare sales loft and outreach, right? Now there's a whole lot more in the space. Over the last probably 5 years, that space has really exploded. Fun fact, it's like marketing automation for sales. It's just taking the same concept of how we came up with Marketos and Pardots initially and applying that automation to sales. But I looked at a couple different tools, and it's like, okay, this one looks a lot more user-friendly, but to get it there, again, was going to be really complicated or not complicated enough. So like, might be user-friendly, but you don't have the ability to mature with the tool. As in, what's built is built. You can't actually, as your users start to adopt the tool and get more advanced usage of it, and they're hungrier for more features, because that's the idea, right? Start more basic, get them adopted, get them hungry, and then you evolve with that. Some of the tools out there don't allow you to do that evolution with them, right? So that's the other side. It's not just like where your current maturity is, but that balance of where you want to get to with your user maturity. And it could be 6 months, it could be 6 years, but hopefully not 6 years if you're doing your job right. But
I think that's, I think you touched on something super interesting. And it was one of the things that, we kind of talked about in our podcast pretty heavily, which was like the idea of planning for the future and having kind of in the case of the conversation we previously had, it was like how you build in like an escape hatch or a rollback plan in case there's something terrible that goes wrong, because, we're in this really kind of fluid changing moment. And, it's very hard for us to know what's going to be in the next year. But from the perspective of growing and of choosing a tool and ensuring that tool is able to grow with you, how do you strategically kind of align the criteria that you're looking at in order to ensure that something that you do choose not only is going to be user-friendly, but also is going to be able to support your internal users as you scale and grow and change? And maybe your use case gets more complicated, because as we know, there are solutions that are very user-friendly because they're very limited in their functionality, but then you hit a certain threshold and it just no longer supports that use case. I know I'm like jumping around in some of the outline we had set, but I think this is a super interesting concept, and I really would love to hear your insights on it.
Yeah. So something that we're transparently still trying to systematize at Zappy, it's the way of thinking that we're trying to get into a repeatable process across our whole tech stack. But when you're going through, so I feel like unless you are in a absolute cash cow of a company right now, gone are the days where like you get excited by a tech, you want to bring it in and just try it out, right? Like you kind of have to be really strict with your budget these days. You have to have that value prop really understood and in a trackable manner, because I don't know anyone else out there, but leadership team is hot on any renewal discussion these days. So like, did we get value out of it? How much value did we get? And that's really going into our renewal decisions, which it should go into those, right? I've had points in my career where it was like, hey, this is a really nice to have tool, and like it's gravy in the back end. And we'll get there, but we don't have that luxury in today's economy to just like have those fun, nice to have tools. And the reason I bring that up is having the understanding of your success criteria for why you're bringing in something, getting really close with their CSM teams. There's a couple companies that I think do this really well. Not sure if I'm like totally allowed to say companies, but like I'm a Gongaholic. Like I really appreciate how Gong has been building out their platform. It seems from a customer perspective, I don't work there, so I can't speak for how it actually feels internally, but from a customer perspective, it has felt like a really smooth evolution of what was originally conversational AI, right? And a lot of people could see where you could take all of that. Okay, you're tracking all these conversations, keywords, you're starting to learn this all, right? We could be applying this to scores for our deals. And then they moved into deals boards, right? Now they have the forecasting module, they have Gong Engage, they have all these features, and it can get really chaotic and confusing. But what we're doing is methodically reviewing those with our CSM. We get regular calls with their product team, which I think is super important. But what we tend to do is say, okay, what do we need now based on the requirements that we've refined with the teams that are going to be using this every day? And then we add a layer as the RevOps experts on that space of where can we grow into? And realistically, when does that look like? It could happen if we have the proper implementation and whatnot, if everything goes great. And then just knowing what we tend to put on our roadmaps are what I call like watch outs. So we may not have all of the details. We may not have the final quarter that's definitely going to be able to be picked up, but it's something that we're leaving some bandwidth for our teams to ensure that they're continuing to refine, explore, continuing to, we meet with different teams around these topics, processes, whatnot. I'm in the sales leadership call, constantly listening to areas of friction that are coming out in conversation that they may not even realize, right? And then bringing that back to the team and saying, hey, this is a feature that people are really struggling with. Do we have it optimally set up? Does it need more training, right? So there's an element of planning you're going to be doing with your teams or by yourself that you should be doing and having built into that tool roadmap for yourselves. And then there's that element of constant listening. It's the biggest thing I miss that COVID took away was being able to just sit in an office and observe and listen to the sales team around you, the managers around you, the CS team around you, marketing. I was able to absorb so much more that went into decision-making on tool set, roadmap prioritization, whatnot, that I haven't maximized in this world of post-COVID, non-really office time. And that's how we've been trying to incorporate is taking it a little bit more control back and just trying to predict. We're going to make correct assumptions. Guess what? We're going to make bad assumptions. We're rolling out Deal Hub right now, actually. And that's literally, I got up in front of the sales team. We've never had a CPQ. We have been using a homegrown quote builder for projects and Salesforce standard quotes for subscriptions. And so I've been nervous that putting more of guardrails around how my reps are quoting is going to be really negatively received. And I chatted about this at our offsite. I walked them through current demo of it, vision for it. And the excitement has been absolutely overwhelming for having actually some more structure on a process that we might take for granted and think, okay, well, they have a process for it. It's been working and it's standard. We didn't have to build a lot out. But it's actually giving them, like building the order form. Because today, all that's done on Salesforce, and then they go and build an order form in Word doc, right? Like those little efficiency gains are actually really maximized when you compound them over time. So all that to say, even with Deal Hub, like I'm phasing that out. I'm starting with an MVP of getting them into a more streamlined, automated CPQ process. And then we know we need to tackle our trial process. We're going to want to roll that in. I'm sure there's other documentation we want to roll in, but right now we're focusing on classic quote process with an order form output and an e-signature. That is a win for our first phase, and it gets that incremental efficiency for the teams that we're going to see back in faster close rates and whatnot. And not to be, this is literally my relevant project, and not doing an advertising for Deal Hub necessarily, but
not going to stop you.
But I will say, that's how we approach everything, and we constantly are trying to stay 2 feet ahead of everyone else. Yeah, and I'm lucky right now. It was just me 2 years ago managing the whole tech stack, right? And so over the last 2 years, I now have someone that's looking over Salesforce and another person that's looking over all the other integrated tech. Salesforce is a bear to have one.
I think this it's really an interesting question, right? We talk about user-friendly and easy to use and that kind of thing. But there is kind of a downside, which is like it's too user-friendly or it's too easy, that, it doesn't have those guardrails. I was reading in one of the communities I'm in, talking about a particular product, and people were saying that it's really powerful, it's really easy to use, but it's so easy to use that you don't realize that you're like overusing it, you're running out of your credits or whatever. That it doesn't have the kind of guidance or guardrails or the lanes that you go into to know what you're supposed to do, as opposed to just kind of use it all. And so that it's just an interesting idea that there's kind of this balance. But I did want to take it back a little bit, because I'm not sure we really kind of defined very well what is user friendly, at least in your kind of world, when you're assessing a tool or a technology or a process or an internal whatever. What is your kind of rubric for user friendliness? What are the variables that you're looking at?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's a collaborative definition, I guess. So we will always have, and we actually try to intentionally pull like an A and a C player into these, but we will say, okay, we're looking at this type of tech for this team for these reasons. Something else I always keep in the back of my mind is, what other use cases could this have? Yes, we might be looking at this to solve a problem that sales has, but hey, I know CS has been having some challenge in this similar area. Are there some wins there? So that's kind of side, not answering your question, but something else we can all help to maximize our investments, because at the end of the day, building your RevOps brand internally, if you look over that tech stack, you're responsible for that. Like the how well you're maximizing the value from this spend and investment for the company, right? So getting back to actually answering how we look at user friendly, there's an element of end user friendly and there's an element of internal friendly. So what I mean by that is we always bring along a stakeholder or multiple from the team that needs to be using it every day to make sure that even things like terminology make sense, right? Because there are words that we use when we're so close to a tech or a problem that in our heads are like, that makes so much sense. And then you roll it out to the end users and they're like, I have no clue what that word means. And in your head, you're like, literally the word is the definition. How else do I describe it? A really great example, actually, lead source. Not lead source, but we were trying to tell a source detail of if someone registered for our platform, right? And why that lead was coming into the CRM, and we gave a product qualified score and stuff, but we launched with Zappy registration, which like in my mind was so clear. Literally it says they registered for Zappy. And that wording, I did not bring someone along for. I put a label on that with the engineers that had it in our API call. And I was like, they couldn't be more clear, right? And it kicked me in the butt because I had to have monthly follow-ups with the head of sales to help explain continually what that type of lead was. And it's funny, it's something that could seem so normal for us. So bringing along a stakeholder, and again, I always try to find a star player and then actually someone who's usually not great at adopting, because I want to try to get to a star player is going to be usually a bit more tech savvy. They're not going to nitpick some of the more basic things, whereas someone who's struggling to begin with might actually struggle with some of the basics and really be fixated on that. So I try to get both perspectives, and then I also take a technical evaluation always, because again, something might be your rep's first choice for technology, but when you actually look behind the hood of how they get to that output and their user friendliness, I realize it's going to be a bandwidth suck on my team to continue to maintain and manage that system. And the more point solutions you bring into your tech stack, which is a whole other conversation, I think, point solutions versus platform, but that you have to be really selfish and protective of your team's bandwidth on how much you have to be day to day in that tool, or how much you can set up to really have that tool do the work for you. So those are the two. When I think about user experience, there's your classic, the people that have to use it every day. But then I also try to put a balance of that, who's going to have to make sure it continues to work that way and as easy as it is for them. And sometimes that means you go with the second choice for the sales team. But typically with that, that sales engagement, I actually ended up going with the second choice because I saw the behind the hood of both systems and realized we were going to hit maximum evolution real fast with one choice. Whereas as soon as, again, people started adopting it, using it, wanting more advanced, I had more flexibility over here. I actually get into this conversation about our current sales engagement tool at Zappy is Groove. And I've always appreciated it because of a simple reason. It is not a separate database of prospects. So in our go-to-market RevOps world, we have so many databases now that we are having to maintain data integrity, process automation, data transformation, all of those different rules, which again is bandwidth suck for your teams. And what Groove did was said, hey, okay, we know that these activities and people that you're trying to reach out to should also be in your CRM. So we're just going to say, hey, needs to be in your CRM to use it. That to me, from a management side of it, is very appealing because I know the data integrity issues that came with using other tools that you're maintaining rules in both systems, right? And throw on top of all of that, your marketing automation system you probably have, which is also another set of data transformation, automation, integrity rules. So that's an area where sometimes you might actually have to make the decision that's not the top UX choice for your customer, which is your internal users, most likely, but is the best bet for the company from an investment standpoint.
Yeah, and so that's kind of looking at the user friendliness from your perspective, right? Like you and the RevOps team as a user, right? Because there's the internal user or the end user, which often is, let's say, the sales team, and it's going to be whether it's their data enrichment or the sales outreach or CPQ or whatever it is. So there's the thing that they're going to have to use every day, but there's also the back end, the management that the ops team is going to have to use, and so you do have to kind of balance the user friendliness of both there.
Actually, there's a question, if you don't mind me pulling it up in our Q&A.
Sure. Oh yeah.
That I think is kind of relevant to this topic, but it's talking about any suggestions on navigating internal team when you are making those decisions. It's very real. I've had people at our company think I am tech ops, right? Like, I'm like, no. So like everyone comes to me for questions on Loom, and I'm like, no, that's a Zappy tool. That is not my team. You need to go to tech ops, right? My issue at Zappy is, and I say issue is a bad word, my navigation challenge at Zappy, I'll say, that I run into quite frequently, actually, especially around the Salesforce platform, is actually our own platform engineers. So we have a lot of integrations between Salesforce and our platform. And it's just a relevant initiative right now. But my best example of you're saying Salesforce CPQ, right? We had a homegrown quoting tool. So Zappy itself was very project-based. So consumption-based, you pay per project, right? And each project in market research has all these different variables that affect what price you end up paying based on how you go about configuring and launching your survey, what audience you're trying to reach. I'll keep it there because it can go on and on. But that makes a more classic CPQ solution a little bit more difficult to implement. And the company made a choice before I was there to build their own. At first, I was like, why did we do this? And the more I learned about the complexity of our solution pricing, I was like, okay, I don't know how else we would do this. So we have this built in. It's also on our platform. So as you're using our platform, it has all that pricing logic behind it. Now, because it's homegrown, it's something they're having to maintain. And the more complex we get with our solutions or pricing or whatnot, the more challenges they're having maintaining it. So as I was evaluating a CPQ for our sales-led journey, which is our primary sales journey, we are not yet product-led growth yet. We're trying to get to really platform-led and self-service and all of that. But the reality is we're working with a industry that has been so white glove agency focused that technology is it's a learning curve for the people we need to get on board with that self-service. So similar to how we're building out our own product is what I take for RevOps too, right? Like focus on really optimizing the sales leg because that's what we know our customers are ready to join on. They're not ready to do self-serve yet. So it's advantageous to really make sure our sales led journey is great. That being said, evaluating different CPQ systems, the engineers for our platform team really wanted to be involved. And I was struggling to understand why they had to be so involved with this. And I was like, it literally doesn't even touch the platform. It is a Salesforce quoting sales-led journey initiative. I go, yeah, there's some wins we can capture back to Salesforce and pass to the platform. But for the initial choice of what tool to use and all of that, it really needs to be based on what's going to be most effective for our sales team and something that we're not going to spend 3 years implementing, like I've seen some other CPQs, right? So it got really dicey, and I'm not going to lie, but I did reach out to a leadership team member, and I was like, I'm going to need some support here overhead. So if you're lucky enough to have that connection, that typically is a good route if you're really getting a roadblock and need to escalate. The other thing I did was just educate as much as possible. I invited them to every demo. I sent them every piece of API documentation I could get my hands on. I really brought them along the journey. And when it came time to make the decision, they were very upset I was making the decision because they didn't have time to review. And the reality is I was able to go back to 6 months of a purchasing journey that I brought them along to, pointed to each of those moments, all the documentation they had. And it was able to prove to them that like this really doesn't impact their world today. And it's not really going to impact their world tomorrow. So reality was it was a decision being made by a SME on a tool that was going to be used somewhere else. It's not a great answer, but that's the reality of how those go a lot of times. I've also had the other side where I really needed IT to be more involved. And they just weren't. It's all an education game, right? It's funny. I always like to compare RevOps to its own small business. We are constantly having our own customer journey internally. You are trying to build awareness, thought leadership, get people engaged and excited. Then you're trying to validate why you're getting them excited about this process or this tool. You're doing refinement of what success metrics look like for them. And then you're making an agreement that this is going to happen and when it's going to happen. And then you're working on maintenance optimization, value optimization, and growth. And then you come back to the renewal. Okay, hey, how is this working? Is it working as we expected, right? we are all running small businesses. So that's something else to just keep in mind too when you feel really chaotic on RevOps. We do typically have a bit more broad of a role at a company than some other more specialized functions.
Yeah, I love this question. It actually like makes me think of the idea of, somebody comes to the doctor's office having seen a commercial for a medicine and goes straight to the doctor and says, no, I need this. And he's like, how do you even know that? And I saw a commercial and they all looked like they were healthy. I would imagine, I'm sure I'm guilty of it too, that like, no, we need this tool without having really done any of the, requisite searching. You just kind of have a gut feeling, and everybody has their own opinions, and we know what they say about opinions and everyone having them. So I definitely.
We just ran into that. Yeah. We had a leader that got sold by I don't know if anyone else gets hit up constantly in their LinkedIn by founders wanting to just get your advice on their product. It's always a sales pitch. In case you weren't aware, it's always a sales pitch. But got fooled by an AI search functionality that would be like, okay, plug all your help desk and your internal intranet and all these things. And it's ChatGPT for your company, right? How many companies have come out with that? Like, ask me anything for your internal work. And that was my red flag, was like, there's so many different tools. Why did this one get chosen? And there wasn't a lot. The more I rolled back the covers, like, there wasn't actually a collaborative decision. There was no requirements to start with. They were kind of like live building requirements while trialing a tool. And when you actually pulled back the lid, it wasn't actually data privacy compliant. Like, the person was storing a lot of our stuff on their own servers, and it was the way they were training their model was actually, so we pulled it out. And ironically, it was something people absolutely loved because it was giving them answers they weren't getting easily before. But we had to make a decision for the company that was protecting the company's IP, the company's data privacy. But also, I think the cool thing of that, there's a silver lining where, like, clearly we saw that people are hungry for this. Something like that is valuable, even if it's not too complex. And so, like, now we can actually put a prioritized work stream against that, and do it in a thoughtful way and bring the right people along, right? And honestly, if you're in a real startup, maybe that's where your maturity level is. And that's cool. Like, your building is their building. And I've been there too. That's why I'm going to bring it back to just really try to take a look at, like, the maturity of the people you're supporting, but also the maturity of your company as a whole as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of, ChatGPT wrappers out there, wrapper with a W. There are probably a lot of ChatGPT wrappers as well. It's interesting taking into account AI and automation. Obviously, we're kind of in a different world in the last year than previous times. In your assessment of vendors and tools and technology, what role does automation play in maybe papering over? Oh, I apologize. I have papering over. Wow, I'm just blowing up over here. Papering over some of the gaps of what was missing on a user friendliness front that can be papered over with automation or the access to AI. Like, has it opened up doors that weren't available previously?
Yeah. So I'm going to start with, and Mark knows, I told him this, I think, around the podcast, but I'm a skeptic a little bit on the marketing around AI. Like, everyone has an AI offering right now. So it's again, really taking a close eye at what that automation really looks like, what goes into activating that automation, because again, I think that the biggest thing all of us can do is approach demos with a skeptical, like, I always try to have positive intent, but I have this level of skepticism of, like, how real is what they're showing me? How difficult was it for them to get to what they're showing me? And we've been really intentional with where we're being gung-ho on automation. Other people at Zappy, by the way, like we have a whole AI Slack channel. People are trying out AI and automation in every aspect of their job, which I appreciate. Like ChatGPT, work smarter, not harder. If it can quickly get you a formula, at least it gets you the baseline, even if it's not the exact right formula. But AI in our tech set, I have like certain tools are implementing it really well, I think. So like something that's adding a level of value to us with Gong is their Ask Anything AI piece of that. And what I say by that is we have been trying, it's funny, we had our EBR with them and they're like, we're really happy you guys are getting on with Gong forecasting, all these positive. They go, ironically, your user metrics have really dipped on our core offering though. Like no one's listening to calls and, you know, that's like the coaching aspect of this. And, you know, what's going on there and it's bandwidth, right? So being able to like, rather than sitting on a 45-minute call, even if it's sped up and now you're on a 30-minute call, but, you know, being able to ask, what's the state of this account? What are risks I should be aware of? What are success metrics? And then they're taking that further and like, we use Medic, right? So, you know, they've been trying out some Medic tracker, smart tracker stuff in the background. And now they're like, okay, we've been doing this over the last 2 years. So like, we feel good about what it's showing. We can start supplementing what your reps are entering for Medic, right? And so you can start to actually even get better coaching based on the tech helping us do that. Another area automation has been really helpful with adoption is something like we use Atrium for our sales management, activity tracking, pipeline trends. And with that, it's like Atrium is one of those things where it was a lot of pre-built KPIs, which makes it easy to plug and play, but not as customizable if you have a funky, complex org. They're getting into a little bit more customization now that they've really proven their core KPI values. But something they did right when generative AI was getting its initial like oomph was added that into their scorecards. So there was always goals you could set up for each team based on benchmarks around that team so that, you know, on Monday morning, a manager could know where they might need to focus with a rep or their whole team for the week, right? Now it's that AI generated where it's not just like, here's a bunch of different metrics we were tracking against the benchmarks, but like specifically, here's what you should be honing in on because it will drive X% over here, right? So just getting more clarity around the insights versus, you know, yeah, I guess, and that's actually how we're starting to implement it in our own platform, which I really appreciate. Is similar to like Gong or Atrium, adding that clarity to all the data because like analysis paralysis is real, especially in today's chaotic world. There's so many data points to look at. It's like, what is this actually telling me and what one should I prioritize? That's where I see automation helping out. It's really doing a lot of that deep dive trending analysis and helping you focus and drop some of the noise for now. Not saying you should forget about those metrics all the time, but at least it helps focus into what you should be focused on versus some of the noise.
Yeah. And I totally get the skepticism, the AI skepticism, not in terms of what it's capable of, but in terms of what people are able to get out of it currently. There's definitely been I think a gap between the kind of promises made and the value found. And I suspect we're going to transition into that gap shortening, both the like expectation getting lower as well as the like actual benefit to the day-to-day B2B user increasing. I don't know if this is kind of a side note, but there was a demo put out yesterday, I think I saw it on X or Twitter, of a new AI product called Devin that is essentially an automated developer. Like literally you say, make this, and it does it. You could set it on Upwork and it could make $1 million basically. And I think a lot of developers probably looked at that and were starting to fix up their resume. But again, you know, those are demos. And so when the rubber hits the road, we'll see. But I think I'm interested because I fall into this trap. From your perspective, given the proliferation of automation tools as well as AI, from a RevOps perspective, are you more likely to consider building something internally than look for an external vendor, given maybe having more resources to do that today, or has it not changed the decision?
It's my favorite conversation to have because it's a constant world I live in with our engineers, right? I don't think AI specifically. So here's what I'll say. Automation has always been a large component of what I look at with a tech stack, and it's not new, right? You think about like demand tools, right? Automating all those data cleansing activities based on a model you put into them, and you set it and let it go, right? And you refine it as you see issues with it or new scenarios come up. Like that type of data transformation, automation has been available for us. So I think like from my perspective, the AI piece is interesting. So like an example of Gong Smart Trackers is technically, it's a tool we pay for. So it's not like we're building it ourselves, but Smart Trackers, we train ourselves, right? That's an area where I actually agree with us being more involved than just trusting Gong's algorithm to pop back out what those smart trackers should be saying, because no one technology is going to know your value prop, know your messaging. Yes, you can train it. But I think training is the key word there. And I think that's the piece that, and I think you hear that a lot about even the AI stuff, right? It's like AI, I mean, will become autonomous, I feel like at some point, but I think some has already, but it's those prompts, right? Like AI is going to give you the best output based on the best prompts going into it. So it's literally that age-old RevOps thing, like quality of data in and quality of data out, right? So I think some of the concepts haven't changed at all. That's why I don't think it's really shifted my perspective. When it comes to buying versus building, that's I don't think automation and AI fully have affected me yet. But it is a really important topic in RevOps to hone in that skill set of knowing when a system makes sense versus when it makes more sense to build it yourself. Like CPQ, for example, I have a sick developer who I had to really get on board with us bringing in a CPQ. And it was a very easy sell from at least my perspective, which obviously I'm trying to sell to someone else, so it can't be that easy. But there are so many other areas we could be optimizing the usage of Salesforce that would require his skill set, that I wouldn't want a year of implementing our own homegrown CPQ with all the automation and data capture and connection points that we're going to get not out of the box. Obviously, there's a bunch of configuration, but with someone who's like, that's what they literally built an entire company around to do. It also means less maintenance. So right now we have a bunch of automation homegrown, and if we need to tweak something or we find a bug, I can't do anything. So if it happens at 4 p.m. Eastern and I know where it is happening, right, but it's in a piece of code that I can't touch, I'm at a loss. Whereas if that's a business tool that's a common business process and whatnot, that should be a little bit more business friendly to manage. So that's the evaluation point that I always look at, is like, how much are we going to have to maintain this? Do we have the skill set to build it? Or is this such a common business process that like we're better off buying something that's been really refined and honed in with many different customers than trying to build something from scratch? I hate building from scratch. So like majority of this stuff someone has done before. Like I even say that to my team. I'm like, listen, these problems are not the first time this problem has arisen. ask your networking groups. If you don't know what networking groups to go to, I will give you a list of them. ChatGPT, that's where I find it really useful for like areas where I'm like, I know this is not the first time this has come up. How else are these things being solved, right? Or again, something as simple as maybe you need to make a formula field in one of your systems and you're like, I just don't know where to start, or a validation rule. Validation rules are like the bane of my existence. I've been in Salesforce for 16 years and I still screw them up all the time. But I don't, work smarter, not harder with those new sets of tech, and have them do at least the baseline for you. And then you can customize to what you need. But
yeah. So as we come into like the last 10 minutes here, maybe, can you think of, and you don't have to give names, maybe like one experience where you had a tool that was chosen that was not user-friendly and kind of the impact of that. And then maybe we'll talk about the other side of the equation too.
I'm on many recordings saying the name of this tool, so I'll keep it out for this one because we did eventually churn off of it. We were stuck in a 2-year contract that we were trying to get out of. But yeah, we got sold. I mean, it was an interesting situation, I'll say. It wasn't like we got sold the demo and bought in, and then what we got in reality was different. We started talking to a company when they were still their original company. We got buy-in, we did our evaluation across different tools and decided that was the top runner, started the procurement process, and that company went through a big merger or acquisition. At this point, honestly, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was acquisition, and rebranded as a different tool. And by the time we signed our contract, we were one of the first customers on their blended platform. That had its own issues because obviously implementation was difficult because it was more intensive from their side because they were like, it was a newer platform for them. It was not the same data sets we had evaluated and done our whole data quality evaluation against. So we had a lot of issues and time that we spent trying to normalize their data set to our CRM data set. And then that company proceeded to do, I think, one of the worst examples of platform build out of all the tech out there, where they got a lot of money and they bought a lot of tech and then started Frankensteining it in. And some tech made sense and some just was like, they're just literally trying to become like an ERP or compete with Salesforce, by buying other tools that did the point functionality. And that meant that our service layer was disrupted because their own teams didn't know all the issues they were having. A lot of times they would blame us when we brought them an error. And then 2 months later, we'd get like an engineer to reply that, oh, actually, other customers did see this and it was an issue. We fixed it though, right? So like it was a bad technical experience. Our users had a lot of issues, clunkiness that we were spending a lot of time troubleshooting ourselves. And so bandwidth wise, it sucked a lot out of my team. I had one employee that was literally spending an entire quarter just on data hygiene and integrations with this tool. And just the relationship. So something else, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this on a tech conversation, but vendor relationship for me, at least, is paramount. That's actually one of the top things I'm evaluating in a discovery with different tool sets is how is the actual partnership with this vendor going to look after we sign the deal? And I'm not always right? There's going to be some stuff that happens that you can't predict how that falls out. Like with this tool, right? We were talking to a completely different company. We bought into a completely different company. And then what we got was the new company. So it's kind of out of our control there, but there's other tools I have passed on because it's been a really uncomfortable sales process. I have felt really pressured into making decisions or pushing a different timeline that wasn't our timeline. Those are all red flags that you're likely going to have a more difficult management with that vendor. I really try to find, the other thing is, especially a lot of our teams at probably the size of companies, especially listening to this, like you don't have a lot of people to do all of the work that needs to happen. So every time one of your end users has a question or an issue, that's distracting you from the work you're trying to get done in a day, right? So looking for tools that have strong CSMs or strong support layers is really important as well. Just making sure like that vendor's really optimizing what you're paying them to do. Those are some of the things I look for there.
Awesome. And I guess we'll end on a high note, maybe the opposite. And you don't have to name names either, but kind of what the outcome of like a very user-friendly tool and positive communication and experience with the onboarding team, what that looks like and what the outcome of that is.
Yeah. So I'd say we're having a really positive experience with Deal Hub. Gong has been another, like Gong to me, like I said, they are someone who really listens to when we're bringing user challenges to them. And also, I think I appreciate when a CSM knows their depth of being able to support. And like Gong is really willing to get us on a call with a product manager. I'm not saying every company is going to be like that. And I actually don't even know how Gong does that effective or efficiently, but please keep doing it. But it just really, it helps. It's kind of like selling, right? Like with your customers, you're helping them feel heard. It helps stop the bleeding a little bit. But the piece I actually look for is, are they doing anything with that feedback? Are they doing anything with the challenges we're bringing to them? And not just talking to a product manager, but actually getting on a follow-up 2 months later to look at a demo of something to say, hey, was this actually what you're trying to achieve? That's huge. Like, and 2 months is fast. I have no idea how Gong gets crap out so fast. It's like, I'm in awe of that. But, and the other thing with Deal Hub, like I celebrated the other day because like our implementation person is like so fast and so efficient that I was like, shit, I'm not learning this. Like, what if I have to go in and tweak something, right? And so I've been spending some time with that and just trying to like follow along. And like, it was a big graduation the other day because I was like, I was actually able to change all of that on my own without having to reach out, right? But just having like the availability is important, and getting connected to the right people that will actually help affect change. Because I know a lot of times it can just kind of like stop the buck at the support ticket you raise or whatnot.
All right. So as we wrap things up here, yes, I'm very proud and I didn't set that up, any of that positive stuff about Deal Hub, but as we wrap things up, if there's some final kind of thing you want to tell the audience about how they can maybe find you or learn more about you or Zappy, as well as, the presentation you'll be giving next week at RevOps Alliance.
So LinkedIn, I think it's literally like Danielle Marquis, no spaces. Don't hold me to that. I have a really obnoxiously bright branding on my page, so you'll know it's me. That is Zappified branding. But yeah, the talk next week, RevOps Alliance, I'm excited about because it's an in-person event. They started up, I think last year was the first year's RevOps specific. And it's just a really great area to geek out with other folks that are in this space. I don't think we have a lot of online stuff, which is awesome now, but like just having that in person is super invaluable. And there's going to be a lot at that talk, everything from like, what does a career path look like, to likely a lot around how AI is playing into RevOps. I'm going to be focusing a lot on that kind of maturity curve and really understanding where you are maturity-wise along your customer journey, and how RevOps can really take ownership and drive that for a company. Feel free to engage with my LinkedIn. I told Mark, I was like, I feel like I'm really failing at the personal branding over there. So hit me up and engage with my activities. I need to get in there and start writing some articles, but yeah.
All right. Well, I'll be tagging you and forcing you, bringing you into the conversation. Perfect timing. We're exactly at 12 o'clock. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us and for sticking with us through some of the technical hiccups we had early on. But I think this was a wonderful conversation, and I hope everybody has an excellent rest of your day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.